would love for everybody to know that we a lot of time we seek all of these things and we give our power away to different people, circumstances, situations. But I think I help with a lot of different things, but I think for me, like the biggest mission is that I like to remind women, and I would like everyone to know that, they are the magic that they seek. You are the magic that you seek. I am the magic that I seek. We have it within us. Everything that we need is already within us, and that we are so much more powerful than we ever realized. And my hope is that when someone comes into my orbit and, they work with me, is that I just help them to just remember and step into that within themselves. Because I think when we do, just so much shifts. Everything is different. We feel about the world different, and the world responds to us different when we step into that own inner power, our own inner magic. And yeah, like you said, everybody's important, everybody's magical, every single person listening or not listening, every single person important, every single woman have so much magic within them. They are so much more powerful and beautiful and strong and just than they could ever even comprehend. So part of my mission in this world to help them remember.
Welcome to episode 12 of season 3 Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast with my guest Deimante Ona, as we sit down and talk about giving permission to self-care and the important reason this conversation is so timely regarding mental health and wellness, regarding our societies as a whole, and regarding collectively the importance of this conversation from an individual to an all-world mental health and wellness, and why it's so important for us to take the time to heal. So join us, pull up a chair, grab that coffee and cannoli, because here we go. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're just telling off your husband.
No, the crazy thing is that our Wi-Fi in my studio doesn't work. So I can't be where it would be most inclusively, just like where the dogs can bark and everybody can do their thing. And
that's so annoying.
Well, it is annoying because it's a recording studio and I don't want to, set him off in what he needs to do. But anyhow, hysterical. And doing a podcast, as you know, is as organic and authentic as it comes. And that was just a perfect example. I was like, hi.
Oh, we're good.
Poor
I'm
baby.
just turning off my AC as well, because otherwise it might the fan start going.
Yeah. Oh my God. So good morning and hi, honey. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a busy morning. One of those where like every minute counts.
Yeah. I find that with this time change, everybody's having exactly that comment because they feel like in losing that hour, like they're just like going. And they're like, what's going on? So I don't know if it's atmospheric or just what is on all of our plates. So, listen, I am so thankful to have you here, Deimante. You are a manifestation, magnification coach. You're a priestess. You do all this work with women and healing. And, it's really interesting because you asked me what we were going to talk about. And the thing that I really want to talk about is self-care. And because I think that we don't know how to give ourselves permission to go through that journey, which is an ever-flowing, ever-expanding, just depending upon the moment in time in our life. And so that's why I invited you here, because you and you've been a guest on my podcast before. which I love. And I want to give a little background on how you came to be, what you do. I also want to say that we met probably about 2.5 years ago, ironically, when the country was shut down, which literally just happened 3 years ago yesterday. Crazy.
Isn't that wild?
It's so wild. And people, I find, don't want to talk about it. And yet it's not about going backwards. I think it's all about like, well, why are you where you are today? Good, bad, or otherwise? Is your mental health off kilter? Or why are you in this moment of like, who am I and what's my purpose? Because this no longer works for me. Or how is it that we set boundaries because we all exploded on social media for those of us who were expanding our communities? And now how do we like either pull back or go deeper or find that, what balance is working for all of us? And as women who had so much more seemingly put upon them, whether you had children or didn't, whether you were losing your job or hadn't, there's just I know women from all aspects, from huge corporate jobs who were like, the demands were too much, or women, who are either getting pregnant or were home having to homeschool and create the lifestyle that they were used to with the work world or didn't. And how were they going to function and how are they going to take care of all of that? And how did they take care of themselves, or did they? And I think that many people are really strangely almost coming into this realization now, consciously or not, in a way that they don't even realize how much they are lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
on. Were you gonna say something else?
Well, I think people, if they didn't look within, if they didn't do it, listen, I'll speak for myself, for all the expansion I did and for all the work that I did. And ironically, now what you and I both know, I'm been going through personally with cancer. It just makes you have to make these decisions. You're forced to make decisions. Good, like for myself, my decision was to not be on film sets and to go within and to take care of myself. And that was a huge decision, to not do something that I'm so personally used to doing. So let's go back to who and how you came to create your practice. What led to that, your journey?
Yeah. Okay, so first off, Felicia, past 3 years, it feels, I think humanity is, I feel like there's so much collective trauma from that in kind of just collectively all over the world in our energy fields, that I think we don't fully comprehend the effect that it's even had on us. Like everything that we knew, everything that we were used to kind of just felt like got ripped away in very, very short amount of time for myself personally. So it's interesting, kind of mentioned to go back about my journey. I remember, for anybody listening, my coaching business is not my first business. My first business, I am also a professional photographer. So I had my photography business. And right as COVID hit, I remember this so vividly. That year was going to be my biggest year of my business so far at the time. So I was a wedding and elopement photographer, and I worked with with couples, like storytelling photographer. And I had all of these weddings in different parts of the world, in different parts of the country, all over Texas, where I'm based. On top of that, I had all of these travel plans. That was going to be our year to just like travel so much, see so much of the world, as we were kind of trying to do the last big adventures before we started trying for a baby, which is, interesting to mention that. And I remember literally within 1 week all of my work fell away one by one, all of it. And then on top of that, the big travel, like we had a 3-week trip planned to Bali, which had been on my, my vision board and my dreams for like 4 years. That we couldn't do that anymore. I was flying home to spend my birthday with my family in Ireland and see my friends in England. I couldn't do that anymore. And I just remember this great crumbling that happened. And at the same time, whilst being an extremely empathic soul, definitely feel the energy of the world and everything around me to a very extreme extent, as I know you do as well. And for us sensitive souls, that can also be a lot harder, because we're not only dealing with our own emotions, which I find most of the time we learn how to manage pretty well. And I think when you're an empath, when you only feel your own emotions, you're like, oh, this is not so bad. It's only when you take on all the other people's collective stuff, and there's so much fear in the atmosphere from everybody, right? This fear, these unknowns, anger, worry, stress, all of these things. So I was feeling all of my personal life kind of crumbling away and business crumbling away, whilst also then feeling this collective worry. And that was awful, and it was absolutely traumatic. But because knowing what I know and being the kind of person, because when I was doing my photography business, at that point I had already had very deep spiritual practices, and I was already really connected, and I was doing all the work that I now coach about, but only for myself privately. So I had tools, and I had the self-awareness to know, this is how I'm feeling, this is how I clear it. So I kind of really, and look at that, as I'm saying, this is 1111, which is a big angel number of manifestation. I just thought I mentioned that, my eye caught it. Yeah, so I already had a lot of spiritual tools, and it was more of those, I'm not gonna do this because this is what makes me feel better. I was more like, I need to do this to survive because I'm having such a hard time. And I know some people, and I saw this in my personal life as well, like, some people were like us. A load of light workers woke up. A lot of light workers in 2020 stepped into their mission. They got activated, they got awakened. A lot of people had their big spiritual awakenings for the first time, or some of us who already awakened. I feel like it's never ending. We just got initiated into deeper levels, and we got activated more and more and more. And some people chose not to choose that path, and they instead grabbed the alcohol and junk food, and they numbed themselves to get through. And some of us felt it and then kind of got connected to something higher to get through it. And I feel like this kind of split the people, kind of the collective, almost into these two energies. And like probably thousands and thousands of people did deepen their spiritual practice because for the first time in their life they had time. Right? Yeah. That was the gift of COVID. We had time that we never had before ever, because we had the jobs and the meetings and the appointments and the business things and the social events. And all of a sudden, all we had was time. And then people kind of chose what to do with it. And for me, it was like, okay, well, I know that I'm not going to turn to alcohol and junk food, because I had the self-awareness to know that's going to make me feel worse. So for me, self-care became it was necessary. It was no longer just a luxury. It was like a necessity for me to get through it. So I dove deep into meditation, into mindfulness walks, into spending time in nature to kind of connect and to quieting my mind. And through that, for me personally, I can now reflect back, even though at the time I absolutely did not feel like this because it was really hard. But now I think that COVID for me was one of the greatest gifts of my life, because it forced me, it was not like, that's how it felt. It felt like it was, a not so gentle nudge to go and grab for those tools deeper than ever before. And then when all my work did fall away, I had this realization that everything I had spent building, and I was so busy building, that for the first time in years, I asked myself, where am I happy? Is this what I want to keep doing? Do I want to still do this in 5 years? Do I want to keep working every weekend and carrying all this heavy equipment that's heavy on my body and working these late nights and be away from my husband and all my friends every weekend. And I was so surprised by the answer, which I know sounds mental, but I was always too busy to even think about it. I was too busy building. I was too busy chasing those goals and, attracting the amazing clients and celebrating and the money that was coming through, that I kind of I got so busy that I didn't ask myself, well, do I truly want to do this? And when I asked myself that, the answer was no. And that in itself was kind of earth shattering, because I was like, well, fuck, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I think deep down, I had always known that at some point I was going to work with women, that at some point I was going to lead these things and programs and retreats. I had always known that, but in my plan, the human part of my brain was maybe when I'm in my 40s or 50s. So I didn't expect to be oh shit, no, it's now. So that was kind of what really started this journey, where I was I feel like I just, even though I didn't know how to at the time, because I had a whole different type of business, but I was it was a very strong soul calling, no, the time is now. There's people there that need your help now, and you're gonna figure it out.
It's so interesting too, because even as many conversations as you and I have had one-on-one, because of the work we've done together, the interesting thing is you and I met randomly because I saw you doing a tarot reading live on Instagram or Facebook or something. And I just sat there and watched, and I think, asked for a reading. And we didn't know anything about each other. And so for somebody to do that random, I choose you and you happen to read for me, is one of those very big trust moments. Because for many people who may be hearing this, they may be like, tarot readings, really? Come on, you got to be serious. Well, for what people don't know about me is, I am an empath. I am an intuitive healer. I am a certified intuitive healer. It doesn't matter what you're certified at or not. If you just come I believe we come into this world soulfully as healers, or not. You and I are healers. I always say, I don't have doctor in front of my name, even though I was pre-med. So I still know I'm meant to be a healer. And I do it every day, whether if somebody's in my chair, a makeup chair, or just how I converse. But it's definitely one of those things, like yourself, who's an artist, who is a storyteller, is somebody who was caring for other people, i.e. in your photography business, I being a filmmaker. It's funny you said, I made a choice a really long time ago when I was a trained filmmaker. It's Jesus, how am I going to schlep all this stuff? And ironically, I ended up still schlepping a bunch of stuff as a makeup artist and hairdresser. And I was like, really? And because I'm a little bit older than you, I got deeper into my path before my realization of, okay, I'm closer to not finishing this path. I think on one hand, it's more I make now the running joke, I'll be directing at 80. Because I wasn't given permission in my 30s to direct as a woman in the film industry. Even though I was trained to do it, there was no room for it. That wasn't even an option. Don't even talk about that. A matter of fact, in my fashion business, though I have my own fashion business, photography business, I literally had only worked with one top female photographer in the entire fashion world. So ironically, Annie Leibovitz was somebody who, for those who are aware of photography and film and now became very aware of who she is, when I was aware of her, it was the Annie who, I wanted to be the next Annie Leibovitz. I was doing one-woman shows. But I found that as a woman, there was always going down this road of, you've got a brain, you've got a heart, you've got these feelings, you've got these visions, you've got all these things, and then you hit these ceilings,
masculine paradigms.
100%. And I have been surrounded, we all have, but I know in the worlds that I chose, the paths that I chose, I truly chose being in locker rooms of men, 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 men. And I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing, because as a lone artist, not meaning to be alone, but as an artist from the time I was a very little girl, I would just create these pieces and they would win awards. And then I would be brought up into these consciousness. So when I got into collective creation, which was filmmaking or doing theater or whatever, I never initially felt that way because I always got on with men. It wasn't until as time went on that I would hear how I would be, like put aside when I felt like I was creating brain children, like I had the idea. I wasn't trying to be right. I could help solve the problem. It's as if you're not being heard. And, you start to collectively go through that, or go through an industry that, you're not this person, you're this person. In our industry, it's called above the line and below the line. And it's a very separate situation. So, you can watch the Oscars and you can celebrate people, but what we don't know are lots of unsung heroes who, like you, give up lots of hours of their life, are away from their families, are missing very memorable moments, marking moments throughout their lifetime, whether it's weddings, funerals, birthdays, baseball games, whatever, because they've made these commitments. The self-care, the business is actually a form of an addiction, love it or not. And I love filmmaking, and I am a trained filmmaker in the way that like many peers are not. So they've gotten into it. I don't think that there's any right or wrong way to get into it, but I think that what it is they're so focused on how they can get the next job, and how they can, get the next accolade, and how they can, make themselves feel important versus like a balanced human life.
The hustle,
And
yeah.
right. And the souls become really like toxic to be around. And I never felt that way early on in my career. I was like loving every bit of it. And it's not that I still don't, because I've been pretty fortunate. But there's a lot of damaged goods that don't take the time to self-care. So when the pandemic came along, and I had already been working with some of the top intuitive healers in the world, where I felt like the civilian. And I was like, how did I get here? Well, I got there because I left the set one day after being on a show for several years and going, oh my God, where's my intuition? I can no longer be around energies like this that are like literally sucking my, I was literally throwing my stuff in my car. And as a Virgo, you don't throw your stuff in a car. You are so neat and so intentional. And I was like, I couldn't get away from this fast enough. And, at the beginning of the pandemic, I started a meditation group where I was every day giving people a focus so they could focus on something like what I referred to as a ring buoy, so they could get out of their heads, get out of their way, and do something that was healthy for themselves. And I think it was a 30-day meditation group.
Wow.
And I don't think people ever saw it coming from me, because they didn't know anything about what I did. And I didn't ask for a dime. I just wanted to help people because that's, who I am. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is probably, what do they call that? I just went blank. Not limited beliefs, but oh my God, I can't believe I just went blank. Where you're pretending that you're something, but you're not. What is that called? Oh my God.
Imposter?
Imposter syndrome. I
Yes.
felt like it was an imposter syndrome, but yet that's exactly who I am. You know,
And
I
can I speak into that for a second?
please.
It's because I think this has been a really big theme for me in my business too. And as you are in my membership, you've been in my programs, we work together one-on-one. I have also, I feel like we're so, especially as women, which I can speak to that because I am a woman. It hasn't felt safe for so long for us to step into this being a healer, being spiritual, being intuitive, being an empath, maybe being a witch. It hasn't felt safe because for the longest time, not that long ago, our ancestors were burnt and persecuted. And so a lot of us end up hiding this huge part of who we are. And someone who is a healer, whether they're consciously aware or not, they're always a healer. They just may come to a point in their life when they're like, okay, it gets either they like something happens and they get activated and they're like, wow, this is what I've always meant to do. Or it just gets to a point when they're like, I'm sick of hiding. It feels no longer sustainable to hide a huge part of my identity. So I'm just going to let myself to be seen. And that in itself is a huge journey, right? That's so scary and so terrifying. And I can definitely speak into that myself because I started a business in which, yes, I do combine practical knowledge of the unconscious mind. And, I'm a trained hypnotherapist and all these other things, but I also combine a lot of ancient spiritual wisdom that's been around for hundreds if not thousands of years, and work with energies and manifestation and the laws of the universe. And for most people, that's pretty out there. And for the longest time, I was so scared that I would get judged for it, or that I would get ridiculed for it, or that people wouldn't want to be in my life anymore. And I had to go through this journey of kind of realizing that, what, if someone decides that they no longer want to be in my life because they think this is all nonsense, or they think that I'm too woo-woo or too like out there, then they're not the kind of people that are meant to stay in my life anyway. And there's just been this liberation almost of being like, what, I am done just stuffing a huge part of who I am in a closet. And that's not to say that everybody I speak to, I'm gonna go and say, hey, have you meditated today? Hey, did you know that you have spirit guides? Like, no, of course not. Like, sometimes on a Friday night, all I want to do is drink a glass of red wine, eat some cheese, and talk about what I watched on Netflix. I'm still human, but
Yeah.
just the fact that I now allow myself to be the full spectrum of who I am. And by doing that, I attracted someone like you. And I know that you've shared with me that I've really helped you in your journey. Don't want to take any words out of your mouth. So
No, please. You can speak.
and so many my other clients who worked with me, they're like, you have changed my life in so many more ways than I ever thought was possible. I've had another client who's had her own business for 30 years, and she thought that's just how things are, and she was overwhelmed and not making the money she wanted, and attracting people and clients were always taking and not feeling good enough, to all of a sudden being like, after us working together, being like, wow, I have the most time I've ever had. I'm making the most money I've ever made, and I actually love what I do. And I didn't know that was possible anymore. So I'm like, if it means that there's some people in my life that may judge me for it, then so be it, because they don't really matter anymore. I send them love and I send them on their way, because by allowing myself to be seen, I'm gonna help all the souls that I'm meant to help. And anybody who's listening, if you have a business, or maybe you have an idea, or maybe you have some friendships that don't feel fully aligned, don't be scared to let them fall away. We're meant to change. We're not meant to stay the same. We're meant to grow and evolve. And if we don't let ourselves, then we're never going to magnetize and attract the actual souls that are meant for us and that resonate with us. And I think recently I've been kind of also learning that some people are meant to be with us our whole lifetime, and we grow together and evolve together. And some people are only meant to be there for a season. And even though it can really hurt to let them go, when you do, you're going to just attract so much more magic and so many more aligned clients, partners, friends. Yeah.
I agree with you. I use the illustration of, this is the way I teach, is, you know, if we look at the galaxy and we have all of this energy shooting across the galaxy, nothing in the galaxy ever stays still. It has to move. So change is inevitable. So if we feel stuck, it's because we're not living in our truth of being a part of the galaxy. And that for some may be like, wow, I've never thought about physics. Well, you don't really have to. Just think of yourself as a flowing river. Like, I also use the example of that river with that perfect balanced tundra where you can hear the water lapping and the birds singing and the trees, you know, whistling with the leaves and all that. To me, the flow, all those kind of visualizations are ways of feeling like you're moving in the manner that you're meant to. We're not meant to stay the same. And yeah, it is painful. I mean, there are certain people that have been in and out of my life that I've reflected on even quite recently, where I'm just like, they're just not meant to be in my life. They're not, it's not, if it doesn't feel good, it's not good. Period. If these were, I'm not saying these people aren't loving spirits for what they do or in the worlds that they are in, but for me, it's not been a healthy balance. It's been very imbalanced or out of balance. And so I've given myself permission to go, I have nothing to prove. I don't owe anybody anything. And it's not about what you owe. It's about, I have so much more to give to others. And starting with myself, you know, and this goes back to the original intention of this conversation regarding self-care, that people need to know that it's okay. We're not talking about like spending days at spas, though that would be great too.
Yeah.
But we also know that there's a balance in life, and it's about boundaries, and it's about intentions, and it's about setting intentions and visualizing and dreaming big. And it's
And
about
protecting
knowing,
your energy. I'm going to speak into that. You know, when we mentioned the kind of letting people fall away, well, that can really be a part of self-care, because
yes,
we create our world from the inside out. Whatever you feel, I always say our energy is our most precious resource. And I feel like especially as women, we have just been so programmed to give, and put everybody else first. But then when you actually ask yourself, well, you know, if someone asks something of you or they want something from you, you can ask yourself, well, is this going to make me feel good? Is this going to help raise my vibration? Is this going to feel nourishing to me right now? And if the answer is no, then love yourself enough to say no. And that doesn't mean that maybe you don't love the other person, because sometimes it can be people that we really love that want something from us, but it can be like, you can't pour from an empty glass.
no,
Right. So it's
no,
about filling up your own cup. And that can look so different. And when we talk about self-care, I agree with you, right? Everybody, feel like when you think self-care, you think floating in a beautiful spa with cucumbers in your eyes and, you know, hot towel on your forehead. And that sounds great. And I would love to be doing that. However, a lot of us with real life sometimes don't have the time or the resources or the opportunities to do that all of the time. And if that's the only way we look at self-care, then it's really unsustainable. However, in terms of actually finding that balance, it can be with as simple as in the morning before you wake up, put your phone on like do not disturb mode, don't look at any notifications for 30 minutes, and just breathe whilst you have your morning cup of tea or coffee. Like breathe in a scent, taste it, be fully in your body, be fully present, just taking some slow, deep breaths, right? It's when you're getting ready in the morning, maybe just spending an extra minute in the mirror and just like say something loving to yourself. And at first it may feel really silly and you may not believe it, but eventually you will, because it's like you're just giving love to yourself. And I think that's something none of us do enough of. We give and we receive, but a lot of the time we expect that love to come from other people, where actually what we don't realize that we can give it to ourselves now. Like we can fill up our own cup, and to also not only to give permission ourselves to do that, but also to even realize that it's possible, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you said, because all the things that I written down was about giving ourselves permission to give ourselves compassion, give ourselves the ability to be selfish. That
Yes.
selfish is actually a positive word, not a negative word. We've learned it incorrectly. There is this a healthy selfish, which is just what you've talked about, talking about giving ourselves permission to be expansive and explorative, giving ourselves permission for time and boundaries, giving ourselves permission to fill our cup, because we can't run the car without the proper, gas in it and all the
Yes.
things properly functioning. So how do we do that with ourselves? And most of us never have, somebody could be listening to this and go, well, that's great for you, but I don't know how I'm going to manage that. I wake up to a crying baby, or I'm running a farm, or, with, hundreds of animals, or I've got to like get off to get to the train and do all these crazy things. And everybody's got their thing. So what do you say to somebody who says all those things? Yes, I understand.
And yeah, so especially the crying baby. So I'm a new mom to a 9-month-old little girl, and self-care does look it is a lot harder now since I've become a mom, because my time is so limited, and keeping a little human alive truly is a 24/7 job on its own, on top of having a business and being a wife and being a friend and being a daughter and a sister. And it's like, hey, I'm still being myself, that's a lot to find. So I can definitely speak into that. And the train, you made me like, I kind of smiled internally when you said that, because that also used to be my life. Back before I became an entrepreneur, I used to commute every single morning 45 minutes to my job in a different city. And I used to have to wake up at like 6 a.m., I think, sometimes 5:45, to walk to the train station to get a train, get off the train, walk to the office. And something I used to do then, which is, I think it's about the energy from which you do those things, right? There's always going to be things that we need to do. Like, we're adults. We always going to have responsibilities. But I think it's about just choosing to like romanticize those little moments, right? So it's kind of like, if you are rushing to get a train, it's like, well, okay, well, what if instead of thinking, or if you're sat in traffic, let's say you're driving to your job or driving to a client meeting, put on your favorite song and just make the best of the situation that you are in, and just choose to see the beauty of it. If you are on a train and you're like, I would much rather be in my bed, well, put on maybe a podcast you really love, or bring a book with you, or pick up a really delicious coffee on the way. It's kind of like introducing those little bits of pleasure and allowing the little things to be the big things. Life is made up of tiny little moments. Everybody has tiny little moments. I think the difference is, I think the people that are the happiest, that then attract more of the quote unquote the big things, are the people that manage to find pleasure and joy and gratitude in the little things. The more that we do that, the more good things we attract to be grateful for. And that truly is a choice. I think what people don't realize is that you get to choose to feel good. You get to choose to be like, okay, I have to wake up at 5. Well, which, by the way, my baby has been waking up at 4:45 for the last month and a half. So speaking from experience here, but it's like, okay, this kind of sucks and I'm really tired, but what beauty can I find in it? And the beauty is, I can watch the sunrise from my window whilst holding my baby. I can, we can step outside in my garden and the rest of the world is asleep. All my neighbors are asleep and we can hear the birds. And it's just like, just slowing down among the hecticness and just choosing to find the beauty in the little things. And when you do that, it's like your whole nervous system relaxes, your mind relaxes, you breathe different. And then all of a sudden, the stressful things are still there. Nothing changed. I'm still up since 4:30, but I'm just choosing. It's like where you choose to put your focus.
Yeah. And so like Luna May is like, look, Mama, I know that your algorithm is to wake up maybe it's 7 or 8, but I want to gift you and me this time together to watch the sunrise together and to take those deep breaths, even if I need milk or I need to cry or I need a hug, and you may not be even halfway awake. I'm just here to say, this is my special time with you. And watching, like in the yoga worlds or what have you, or any of the special spiritual worlds, or rising with the sun is like everything to the practice. I feel like she's your little messenger of like, I know, Mama, your algorithm is this, but I'm going to like reawaken you to this. This is what I'm here to do.
Oh yeah, I feel like, oh my gosh, she's already been like such a great little teacher. And I knew it's so funny, when I was pregnant, I knew she was gonna have a strong personality because, I could, when you're super pregnant, unfortunately, you can only sleep on your sides. And when I would turn on, like, I think it was my left side, every time I turned on my left side because my right side was numb, she would get so mad and she would start kicking me so hard. It was like I could tell she wasn't happy. And just stubborn and just like has such a big personality, and she's so very much knows what she likes and she doesn't like. And I always call her like my little wildling. I'm like, she's my little moon star baby. I'm like, it's interesting. So I feel like she's yeah, she's definitely a great teacher to me, and has made me kind of explore a lot of different parts of myself that are rising up to like be healed so I can be the best version of me that I can be for me, but also for her.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. And it's interesting. You talked about choice. You talked about the little moments that are the gifts. It's like molecules, we're just all molecules, and we're a collection of molecules. So it is like those little moments that are humbling, I think, that taking those moments to appreciate. It's interesting. I think each one of us does healing work in different ways. I personally think that even though I haven't created a business over healing in the way that you have, I feel like one of the things that I've explored through these last couple of years is giving myself permission to publicly express myself in ways of telling stories that are meant to be teachable moments, while sharing a little insight about me, while also taking people on a journey. And I don't know that they realize it or not, but I think collectively over time, I've started to see like how I do this, where I even did it recently going through my 4th treatment of chemo, where I told a story how my brother came in to take care of me because my husband was doing the Oscars. And, my brother was sweet enough to come in and step in for my husband so he didn't have to take off work, though he would have. And when you're walked into the chemo ward, there's all these little cubicles where you see these people, and it just takes my heart because, you see these people going through this process and they're very vulnerable, and there they are in these open spaces. And I've been really blessed to be taken into private rooms where I have a private space with my own bathroom, my own, like, I feel very, very fortunate. I don't know. I don't even ask why. I just thank God or my guides for putting me in that space so I can go through this process in a very private way. But while I'm doing it in a very private way, I've been very open and public. And I knew that that was not I didn't consciously say, oh, I'm going to go public with this. The reason why I went public with it, that I think you know and understand, is because I want to teach about the importance of advocating. And I want to teach the importance of awareness. It's not like, I hope that people never ever have to cross these paths, but if they do, here are things to know. So in this particular situation, this last time, we were brought into a room for the first time of all the private rooms where there were windows. And the windows were facing the Hollywood sign up in the mountains, and then the snow-capped mountains right behind it because of the weather that we've had. And it was like, it's like I said, it was like my lifeline and my oxygen to be able to focus on that while I'm receiving hours and hours of treatment. But it took me back to when I first got to Hollywood and how I had this loft space. And this loft space was then on top of the loft space had a 2-tiered rooftop space that I would go up onto every day. I didn't say this part, that I would go out into the nude, and because nobody could see me, and I would practice my calisthenics and my yoga. And I would look up at the Hollywood sign and I'd say, "Good morning, Hollywood. I'm going to take you by your balls today." And I literally said that every day. And I was just like, and there I was sitting there in that room being brought back this, this affirmation, and what was just like giving me the power and giving me the positive uplifting and giving me the ability to get through this time that can be very feeling daunting and lonely, and you feel like a bubble girl, because I do, because I've continued to keep myself in a very safe environment because of being immune compromised, and it's one of those things where I was like, but this empowered me like my superhero invisible cape, like just like, "Good morning, Hollywood. I'm going to take you by your balls today, and I'm winning,"
Yes.
and
You're
I
taking
tell
cancer by the balls.
That's right. And so I share these stories to hopefully not feel for me, woe me. It's to say how you can rise up, how you can take hold of things, how you can, again, it's a choice of how you look at things and how you step into things. And I think that that's one of my strengths of how I teach and how I like to share. And it's not about, again, me, it's about all of us collectively. We all have the power to choose how we look at things, how we face off things, how we plant our seeds, how we set our intentions, like you say, as well as set our boundaries and go forth. And it's always, we're always in because life is always shifting, it's always a pivot. We've talked about the pivots that you took. Technically, I took, even though I still went back to film work, thankfully I could do that. It's been in a very interesting environment to do that, because even though we're quote unquote not in a pandemic anymore, yet people are getting COVID every day still. And having to be in a world where some have to wear a mask and some don't, and how some are considered more entitled than others. And I think that one of my takeaways going through this whole time is that I wrote this to my sister, actually, and I said to her, I said, I want to just bring this up for you. I said, it was during the Oscars that I wrote this, and it was an emotional, I'm not into the idolizing awards situation, because I think it can make other people feel bad. I think that giving awards can be a good thing, but I think it can have a negative impact as well. So it's a very I fluctuate with my feelings. But what I said was, because of the people who were being awarded, who've been around for a long time, or, who had been no longer considered the it person or whatever, what I wrote to her is I said, it gives me hope that all of our dreams matter. that it's never too late, and that no dream is too big, and no one's dream is bigger or more important than another.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So I think that my question to you is, in this path of yours that, you've focused on women, what is it ultimately that you are, like, I feel I know, but I'd like to hear from you. What is it, the message that you like to give women, no matter where they're coming from, whether they're single, married, with or without children, entrepreneurial, or just starting out? What kind of impact do you like to want to make, and what's the message that you're trying to get and
I
give?
think the biggest thing for me is I would love for everybody to know that we a lot of time we seek all of these things and we give our power away to different people, circumstances, situations. But I think I help with a lot of different things, but I think for me, like the biggest mission is that I like to remind women, and I would like everyone to know that, they are the magic that they seek. You are the magic that you seek. I am the magic that I seek. We have it within us. Everything that we need is already within us, and that we are so much more powerful than we ever realized. And my hope is that when someone comes into my orbit and they work with me, is that I just help them to just remember and step into that within themselves. Because I think when we do, just so much shifts. Everything is different. We feel about the world different, and then the world responds to us different when we step into that own inner power, our own inner magic. And yeah, like you said, everybody's important, everybody's magical, every single person listening or not listening, every single person in the world, every single woman have so much magic within them. They are so much more powerful and beautiful and strong and just than they could ever even comprehend. So part of my mission in this world to help them remember.
Yeah, I love that, because I know that, one of the things with Women's History Month right now is I try to highlight a woman every day that may or may not be alive, and what their mission was, and to remind people of the power that they encompassed while they were here or are here. And it could be anything from women's movement to AIDS, to writing, being a songwriter, to surviving Auschwitz, or I mean, like lots of crazy, like big life things. But you don't have to have done the big things, so to speak. It could be literally waking up every day and just putting yourself first. It could be just getting yourself the shower, or the brushing your teeth and the brushing your hair, and choosing to wear an outfit that makes you feel good, and stepping into the unknown, because every day is a miracle.
And we're
And you
worthy
are.
just because we are, right?
That's right.
That you said that we don't have to have done these big things that deserve awards. Every single one of us is worthy just because we are. And Felicia, I think it would be amazing if in one of those days you celebrated yourself amongst those women.
Well, thank you. I feel the same about you. I've always been a big cheerleader for women. I wish women knew that even though we're not raised in the team sports, so to speak, environments, that we learn from the get-go how to collectively raise each other up, that we have the power to do that. You don't have to be in a sorority to do that. I think for many women, that's their first time, besides like Girl Scouts or Brownies, if they do any of those kind of formulaic things, that they those are their first opportunities to learn, and those are always very competitive spaces, and it shouldn't be a competitive space to raise women up. Women should be in a space of nurturing, of
Yes,
love,
I agree.
of peace, of knowing that they're good enough just as they are, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from, no matter what they have or haven't achieved, that they are beautiful just as they are. And I know this firsthand because, no matter what I achieved from the time I was very, very little, there was always this underlying message that I wasn't good enough because I was a chubby little girl, so to speak. So it didn't matter that I was a straight A student. It didn't matter that I was winning awards as an little artist. It didn't matter that I could perform. It didn't matter how kind I was. It didn't matter if I was a leader in my world. It didn't matter. There was always something that was off about me because I carried extra weight. And so for me personally, that's just one aspect of my understanding the plight of coming up in this world and being heard and seen and accepted for who you are. I also knew what it was like growing up in the 60s and 70s to be a little white freckle-faced girl, but still be discriminated against because of my cultural and religious upbringing. So I have a very empathetic, sympathetic sensibility of having people feel welcomed. And I like to think I walk that walk and talk that talk and show up just being, even if I don't open my mouth, and just how I present and just will fill space. And I think for women to be heard, to be seen, to feel value is something that we're dealing with a world where women collectively are still technically considered second-class citizens. Let's be honest. They're only here to procreate for most cultures and not be seen and heard. This is why we're dealing with so much stuff. This is not a negative statement. This is meant to be an empowering statement. That collectively we have the power against all odds to do things that I know that we can break barriers beyond our wildest dreams. And that, with that said, I hope that anybody who hears this feels the empowerment to do something within their own life, within their own communities, and within their own space and time that takes them beyond their wildest dreams and helps many others along the way. But it has to start within oneself.
Yes, 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 yes. I share all of those thoughts.
Well, I love you. I thank you for taking this time. And is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah, just thank you for having me. Thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for sharing your stories and your voice and your beautiful soul, because it is beautiful and I love what you're doing. Yeah, and you're such an inspiration to so many women. And I'm so privileged to have been, your coach and kind of having you in all my different programs, because yeah, you're beautiful. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, listen, I feel like one of the greatest gifts that came out of these last 3 years was you coming into my life. And that I took a leap of faith of getting on social media in a way that allowed me the opportunity to align with beautiful soul like yourself. Because as I've said to you, you're forever friend. You're forever, a woman that I want to run with. And I couldn't be more grateful. And I hope that for those who hear this want to know more about what it's like to work with you. So
yeah, well,
I look forward to that.
I would love to invite people into my orbit. I have all sorts of offerings, programs, free things, podcast. Maybe I could share my links. You can put in the show notes. But yes, if you resonate with what we talked about, I would love to welcome you in my space.
Yeah, that's imperative. Well, honey, love you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.